I never believed in coincidences, until the night I saw myself walking across the street. Not a lookalike, not a, hey, you kinda resemble my cousin, kind of deal. No, it was me. Same hair, same jacket, even the same tiny scar above my eyebrow that I got when I was 12. The kind of detail no stranger could ever fake. But I should probably explain how I ended up there in the first place, standing on a rain-slick street corner at midnight, staring at my own face. A month earlier, I'd crammed everything I owned into the back of a rental truck that rattled and wheezed like it was on its last breath. I left my old town behind without looking back. Friends, family, the mess of my past, I told myself I was shedding it all like old skin. I wanted a reset button. A clean slate. The city I moved to was the kind of place that looked alive even when you stood still. Glass towers glinted in the sun like knives. At night, streets pulsed with neon, buzzing signs stacked on top of each other like a restless heartbeat. It smelled different depending on where you walked. Fresh bread outside the bakery, gasoline near the station, roasted peanuts from a cart that a weary man pushed down the block at odd hours. Every corner whispered something new, and I felt both anonymous and strangely seen at the same time. My apartment was on the top floor of a brick building with ivy climbing up its side. Not glamorous, but it had character. The kind of place with creaky floors that complained at every step and narrow windows that framed slivers of the skyline. At night, I'd hear laughter spilling from the bar 2 streets down, or trains rumbling in the distance like giants turning in their sleep. I told myself it was home now, even though it didn't feel like it yet. For the first week, I convinced myself things were normal. I went for long walks, explored coffee shops, tried to memorize street names. But then, odd things started happening. The first was at the grocery store. I was checking out, swiping my card, when the cashier smiled and said, "Thanks, Alex." I laughed and shook my head. It's not Alex." She frowned, tilting her head. "Really? Sorry, you look exactly like him." I shrugged it off. Mistaken identity happens. But the next day, when I stepped into a cafe I'd never visited before, the barista greeted me like an old friend. "Back again, double espresso, right?" I froze for a second, then chuckled. "First time here." The barista's smile faltered. He scanned me for a moment, almost unsettled, before muttering, "Huh. Weird." By the third time it happened, the hairs on the back of my neck started prickling. People didn't just look at me, they recognized me. Like I was someone they already knew. Still, I told myself it was just coincidence. Cities are crowded. Doppelgangers aren't unheard of. Maybe there was just some guy named Alex who happened to share my face. Rational explanations helped me sleep at night. At least, for a while. It was a Friday night when things shifted. I couldn't sleep. My mind was restless, bouncing from thought to thought. The air in my apartment felt thick, so I threw on a jacket and decided to walk it off. The streets were quieter than usual. Rain had slicked the sidewalks, and the glow of neon signs stretched across puddles, bending into warped colors. My shoes splashed lightly with each step. I stuffed my hands into my pockets and inhaled the damp, electric smell of the city after rain. That's when I saw him. Across the street, standing under the flickering light of a bus stop. My chest tightened, because it wasn't some random stranger. It was me, my posture, my frame, the way his hair curled just slightly at the edges when it got damp. Even the nervous twitch of his left hand, I'd noticed mine since I was a kid, and here it was, mirrored perfectly. For a moment, I froze. My brain sputtered like an engine refusing to start. He looked up at that exact moment, and our eyes locked. And then, God help me, the corner of his mouth curled into a smile. But it wasn't my smile. It was sharper, knowing, almost mocking. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and run. But instead, I stepped forward, one shaky foot after the other. The street was empty, silent but for the hiss of rain. My heart hammered so loudly I could hear it in my ears. He didn't move. He just stood there, waiting, watching. When I finally reached him, I opened my mouth to speak, but my throat felt dry as sandpaper. Before I could force out a word, he said, "You're late." The sound nearly knocked the breath from me. It was my voice. Lower maybe, colder, but unmistakably mine. I stammered, Who are you?" He tilted his head, studying me like I was a painting hung crooked on a wall. His eyes flicked over me, assessing. Then he smirked. "You really don't know, do you?" Before I could respond, he stepped past me. His shoulder brushed mine as he walked by, and I swear I felt a chill run straight through my bones. By the time I spun around, the street was empty. No footsteps, no shadow, just rain dripping from the bus stop awning. I stumbled back to my apartment like a man sleepwalking. My mind felt tangled, my body electric. Over and over I replayed it. His voice, his words. "You're late. Late for what?" I barely slept. By morning, I'd convinced myself it had to be some sick prank. Maybe I'd wandered into some weird performance art. Maybe this Alex guy, my supposed double, had caught wind of me and decided to mess with me. Rationalization was the only thing keeping me sane. But then I found the note. I was getting dressed when I slipped my hand into the pocket of my jacket, the same one I'd worn last night. My fingers brushed against something folded deep in the lining. I pulled it out, a piece of paper, creased and worn, like it had been waiting there for a while. I unfolded it, and nearly dropped it, because the handwriting on it was mine. Absolutely, undeniably mine, and the message was only 3 words. "Don't trust him." My mouth went dry, my hands shook so hard I nearly tore the paper in half. I stared at the note until the letters blurred, until my own handwriting looked like something foreign. I tried to think of explanations. Maybe I'd forgotten writing it. Maybe I'd been drunk. Maybe I'd sleepwalked and scrawled it in the night. But deep down, I knew none of those things were true. Someone wanted me to see that note. And somehow, that someone was me. That realization left a weight in my chest, a kind of dread that no amount of rationalizing could shake off. Because if I couldn't trust him, what did that mean for me? The rest of the day passed in a haze. Every time I saw my reflection, in a store window, in a puddle, I half expected it to move differently, to smirk back at me. My own face began to feel unfamiliar. I caught myself checking my eyes in the mirror, just to make sure they were still mine. But the note sat in my pocket like a live coal, burning against me with every step. And that night, when I finally tried to close my eyes, a thought gnawed at me, louder than all the others. If he was out there, watching, then the first time we met wasn't an accident. It was an appointment, and next time, I knew, he wouldn't just be passing by. He would be waiting for me. And when he did, my life would never be the same again. The note never left my pocket. Even when I changed clothes, I kept it with me. Folded so many times the edges started fraying. Every time I touched it, it felt like proof I wasn't losing my mind, proof that something was happening to me, whether I wanted to believe it or not. But the longer I held onto it, the heavier it felt. I couldn't explain it, but the paper almost seemed to radiate a kind of weight, like it knew more than I did. 2 days after finding it, I convinced myself I had to get answers. Pretending everything was fine wasn't cutting it. I decided to go back to the cafe, the one where the barista swore he'd seen me before. Maybe this so-called Alex really was real. Maybe people there could tell me who he was. The place smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon. A bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. The same barista looked up from behind the counter. For a split second, I saw relief flash across his face, like he was recognizing an old friend. "Back again already," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. I forced a smile. "Actually, I was wondering, do you know someone named Alex?" The barista paused. His eyes narrowed slightly. He leaned on the counter, lowering his voice. "Yeah, I know him. You mean you're not him?" My throat tightened. "No, I'm not." He studied me for a long moment. "Could have fooled me. What does he do? Does he come here a lot?" The barista hesitated, then shrugged. "Every morning. Always sits at the back table. Double espresso, no sugar. Kind of quiet, but polite." My pulse quickened. "Did he come in today?" He shook his head. "Not yet." I glanced toward the back of the cafe. Empty chairs, an abandoned newspaper. The air felt suddenly heavier, like it knew something I didn't. "Look," the barista added, "if this is some kind of joke, it's not funny. He told me last week he'd been here for years. Said this place was his, constant." He gestured around the cafe. "So if you're gonna pretend you don't know him." "I'm not pretending," I cut in. My voice cracked. "I swear to you, I don't know this guy." The barista gave me a wary look, then shrugged again. "Then maybe you should meet him yourself." My stomach churned. That was the problem I already had. I left without ordering anything. The rain had started again, thin drops tapping against my jacket. Every person I passed on the sidewalk felt like they were staring at me too long, just long enough to make me wonder if they knew something. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The city hummed outside. Distant laughter, a car horn, the steady rhythm of rain. I kept replaying the barista's words. Every morning, double espresso, his, constant. If I wanted to find him again, I knew exactly where to look. So I set my alarm. The next morning, I walked into the cafe just after it opened. My heart felt like it was trying to claw out of my chest. The place smelled sharper this early, fresher. A couple of people sat scattered around, heads buried in laptops. And there he was. Back table, dark jacket, coffee steaming in front of him. It was like looking into a mirror that didn't care what I wanted to see. He sat calmly, casually, as though waiting for me to notice him. His fingers tapped the mug in a rhythm I recognized, my rhythm. I nearly turned and left, but my feet betrayed me. Step by step, I moved toward him. His eyes lifted, and that same thin smile spread across his face. Right on time, he said. I froze. My mouth was dry. Who are you? He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Sit. Let's not make a scene. My knees trembled as I lowered myself into the chair. Up close, the similarities were unbearable. The scar, the small mole near his jawline, even the faint shadows under his eyes from sleepless nights. Why do you look like me? I asked, my voice a whisper. He tilted his head, as if amused. Maybe the better question is, why do you look like me? I felt heat rising in my chest. Stop playing games. I'm not playing. He sipped his coffee slowly, deliberately. You think you came here by choice? You didn't. You followed the trail. What trail? His smile widened. The one I left for you. My blood ran cold. The note. He didn't answer, just raised his eyebrows like I was finally catching up. Why would you tell me not to trust you? I asked, my voice sharper now. His eyes darkened. Because you shouldn't. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. The air around us seemed heavier. I realized the cafe had gone unusually quiet. No clinking cups, no chatter. Just silence. And then, in the reflection of the window beside us, I noticed something. It was us, sitting across from each other. But the reflection wasn't right. In the glass, he was smiling wider, teeth sharp and gleaming, while I sat still and pale. I blinked. When I looked back at the real table, his expression was calm again. I jerked up, knocking my chair back. The sound finally broke the cafe's silence. People turned, startled, but when I glanced around, none of them seemed to notice him. They only looked at me, as though I'd been talking to myself. I stumbled out into the street, the bell over the door jangling behind me. The air was thick with exhaust fumes and drizzle. My chest heaved as I tried to process what I'd seen. Had I imagined it? Was I losing my grip? But then I felt it, a weight in my pocket. I reached inside, another note, folded neatly, like it had been slipped in while I wasn't paying attention. I opened it with trembling hands. This time, it didn't just say don't trust him. It said, he isn't the only one. My head spun. The sidewalk blurred under my feet. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd pass out. If there was more than one, if there were others like him, what did that make me? And just as the thought sank in, I heard something that made my blood run cold. A voice, behind me, my voice, whispering, you shouldn't have found me. I spun around, and saw a second version of myself standing in the crowd. I froze in the middle of the sidewalk. The crowd moved around me, people brushing past, umbrellas bumping into my shoulders, but I didn't notice any of them. All I could see was, me. Another me. He stood half a block away, just watching. No smile this time, no mocking tilt of the head. Just stillness, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. My stomach twisted into knots. I forced my legs to move, stumbling back a step, but the second version of me mirrored it. Not perfectly, deliberately, like he wanted me to notice the difference. And then he turned and slipped into the crowd. Panic surged through me. I pushed past strangers, muttering apologies, trying to follow. For a moment, I caught glimpses of his jacket between shoulders, the back of his head vanishing around corners. My pulse hammered in my ears, sweat mixing with the drizzle on my forehead. I chased him down an alley that stank of damp cardboard and rust. Trash cans leaned against the walls, overflowing with black bags. My shoes splashed in shallow puddles as I turned the corner. Empty. The alley was deserted. The echo of my footsteps bounced off brick walls, the only sound left. I stood there trembling, my breath sharp and uneven. My reflection, my copies, were multiplying. The note's warning, he isn't the only one, echoed in my head like a curse. I pressed my back to the wall, slid down until I was crouched, and gripped my hair with both hands. My thoughts spiraled. What were they? Clones? Twins I'd never known about? Ghosts wearing my face? Or something worse? I pulled the first note from my pocket, crumpled now from how many times I'd held it. Then the second, fresher, the ink darker, almost wet. My handwriting, identical, but I hadn't written these. So who had? The sound of metal clattering snapped me back. A trash can lid rolling across the alley. I jumped to my feet, heart in my throat. Who's there? My voice cracked. No answer. Just the slow drip of water from a pipe. I backed away, step by step, until I was back on the main street, swallowed by the noise of the city again. Car horns, chatter, the hiss of a bus braking at the curb. Somehow the chaos of strangers felt safer than silence. I went home and locked every bolt on my door, even shoved a chair under the handle. My apartment felt too small, too exposed. I couldn't escape the mirrors, either. Every shiny surface, windows, my bathroom glass, even the dark reflection on my TV screen, seemed like a doorway they might crawl out of. I tried calling someone, anyone, but realized I didn't have many people left. I'd moved here alone for a reason. I thought about dialing my sister, but what would I even say? Hey, just checking in. Also, I've seen two people who look exactly like me. Any advice? I didn't dial. Instead, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. If these doppelgangers were real, there had to be something. Stories, urban legends, psychological conditions. I typed, "seeing your double," into the search bar. Hundreds of results popped up. Mythologies from different cultures. A German word, Doppelgänger, literally, double goer. Stories of people meeting their own doubles as omens, harbingers of death. Folklore saying if you meet your double, you'll die soon. I slammed the laptop shut. My skin crawled. No, it couldn't be that. I needed proof, solid, tangible evidence that I wasn't just hallucinating. Next time I saw one of them, I'd take a photo. A video, something. I didn't have to wait long. The next evening, I went for another walk, against every instinct telling me to stay home. Part of me was terrified. Another part needed answers. The city was buzzing with life. Street musicians drummed on overturned buckets, a vendor roasted chestnuts at the corner, teenagers laughed too loudly. The normalcy of it all made me feel like maybe I was crazy. Maybe I'd imagined it, and then I saw him. At least, I thought it was him. Standing outside a bookstore, head tilted down as though reading the titles in the window. Same jacket, same hair. I fumbled my phone out of my pocket, fingers trembling, and lifted it. The camera screen framed him, framed me. But when I snapped the photo and looked at it, he wasn't there. The sidewalk was empty, just the bookstore window, just strangers walking past. No double, no proof. A cold shiver spread across my spine. Looking for me, a voice whispered. I spun. He was behind me. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my phone. People passed between us, oblivious, like they didn't see him. He stepped closer. His eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time I realized something. His eyes weren't quite the same as mine. They were darker, not just the color, something deeper, like they held shadows. What do you want? I managed. He tilted his head, smiled faintly. What you'll want to, eventually. What does that mean? But before I could get an answer, a car honked nearby, and in that split second of distraction, he vanished. My hands shook as I clutched my phone. I opened the camera roll again. The photo was still empty. Just me, standing alone. The world tilted under my feet. I had no proof. Nothing but the notes. Nothing but my own terrified memory. Back home, I paced the floor until my legs ached. Every sound from the hallway made me flinch. Every creak of the building sounded like footsteps. I poured myself a glass of water, hands trembling so badly I spilled half of it on the counter. And that's when I noticed something. There was a new note. Right there, sitting neatly on the kitchen counter. I hadn't left it there. My chest constricted. I picked it up slowly, unfolding it. This time the message was longer. My handwriting again, but slanted, rushed. They can move where you can't. Don't let them in. I staggered back, nearly knocking over the chair. My eyes darted around my apartment. Shadows stretched across the walls, dark and long. The windows suddenly felt like weak barriers, fragile sheets of glass between me and whatever was out there. I didn't know who was leaving me these warnings, whether it was another version of me, or something else entirely. But one thing was certain. I wasn't imagining it. And if I wasn't imagining it, then my double wasn't just a copy. He was something else, something that wanted more than just to exist. The lights flickered, just for a moment, but enough to freeze me in place. And in that instant, in the dark glass of the window, I saw him again. Not outside, inside, standing right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The reflection in the glass was clear, too clear. My own shape behind me, shoulders squared, head tilted in that same unnatural way I'd seen before. But my apartment was silent. No footsteps, no breathing but mine. I forced myself to spin, fists clenched, ready for anything. Nothing. The room was empty. The reflection was gone. I staggered back, heart hammering, pressing myself against the wall. The air in the apartment felt heavier now, like it had soaked up my fear and turned it into weight pressing down on me. My phone buzzed on the counter. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The screen lit up with an unknown number. With shaking hands, I answered. Hello. Static hissed at first, like someone holding the phone too close to a TV. Then, beneath it, I heard a voice. My own voice. You're not safe in there, it whispered. I gripped the phone tighter. Who is this? You know who this is. The call ended. My stomach lurched. I tried to call back, but the number was already marked as invalid. I wanted to leave, but where would I go? If they could find me here, they could find me anywhere. Still, staying felt impossible. The apartment was no longer mine. It felt borrowed, infiltrated. I threw some clothes into a backpack, grabbed my wallet, and left. The city at night should have felt alive. Bars spilling light onto sidewalks, groups of friends laughing too loud, taxis honking, but instead it felt hollow. Every sound stretched thin, every face in the crowd a potential mirror of mine. I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town. Cash only. I didn't give my real name. The receptionist didn't even look up when I handed over the bills. That anonymity gave me a sliver of comfort. In the room, I double-locked the door and pulled the curtains tight. The carpet smelled like stale smoke, and the wallpaper peeled at the corners. It wasn't much, but it was somewhere they wouldn't expect. Or so I hoped. I barely slept. Every creak of the bed frame, every hum of the fridge, I convinced myself was a step closer to me. When I did drift off, I dreamed of endless hallways lined with mirrors. In every reflection, dozens of versions of myself stared back, some smiling, some scowling, some pressing their palms flat against the glass like they wanted to break through. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, and there was another note. On the nightstand. I hadn't brought the others with me. I was sure of it. But there it was. My handwriting. Stop running. He already knows where you are. The paper trembled in my hand. My throat went dry. If he knew where I was, if they knew, then what was the point of hiding? I shoved the note into my pocket, grabbed my bag, and stormed out. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay. As I walked through the near-empty streets, something gnawed at me. The notes. They weren't threats, they were warnings. From who? From another version of me. One that was trying to help. My mind spun with questions I couldn't answer. And then I noticed the man across the street. At first, I thought it was just another pedestrian. But then he stepped under the streetlight, and my breath caught. Me, but older. Lines etched into his forehead, stubble gone gray. His eyes looked tired, haunted. He raised a hand, not in greeting, but in a subtle wave, as if signaling me to follow. I don't know why I crossed the street. Maybe curiosity outweighed fear. Maybe some part of me hoped he held the answers. Up close, he was even more unsettling. His posture mirrored mine, his movements deliberate but weary. He glanced around nervously, then leaned in close. You don't have much time, he said. His voice was mine, but rougher, raspier. They're already inside. Inside what? I whispered. He shook his head. Inside you. A chill ran through me. What are you talking about? He grabbed my wrist suddenly, his grip iron strong. Listen to me. Every time you see one, every time you hear them, they're not just outside. They're chipping away at you. At your mind. At your place here. I yanked my hand back. This is insane. Insane. He gave a bitter laugh. You think I wanted this? You think I chose to know what they are? Look at me. He leaned closer, eyes wide. I used to be you. The words hit me like a blow. Before I could respond, headlights swept over us, and when I blinked, he was gone. Just gone. I staggered back, looking wildly around. The street was empty. Only the sound of a distant siren cut through the night. I was shaking uncontrollably now. My older self, a future me, Or just another trick? I stumbled into a 24-hour diner, desperate for the illusion of normalcy. The warmth, the clatter of dishes, the low hum of conversation, it felt grounding. I slid into a booth and ordered coffee just to have something hot to hold. But even there, I wasn't safe. In the mirror behind the counter, I caught sight of myself sitting in the booth. Only, it wasn't me. The reflection smiled. I wasn't smiling. I nearly dropped my cup. My hand trembled as I stared. The reflection lifted its coffee, sipping casually, eyes never leaving mine. And then it mouthed words. Almost ready. The mug slipped from my fingers, coffee splashing across the table. A waitress hurried over, but I barely heard her. My eyes were locked on the mirror. The reflection was normal again. Just me, pale and terrified. I mumbled an apology, threw some bills on the table, and stumbled out. The city air hit me like ice. My mind raced with everything I'd seen, everything I'd been told. If they were inside me, if they were waiting to take over, then maybe this wasn't about survival anymore. Maybe it was about holding on to myself before I slipped away completely. Back at the motel, I locked the door again and sat in the dark, gripping the latest note. The words blurred as tears pricked my eyes. Don't let them in. But what if they were already here? I pressed my palms against my temples, rocking slightly, trying to block out the whispers I thought I heard at the edge of my thoughts. My own voice, murmuring things I couldn't quite make out. And then the lights flickered again. This time, they didn't come back on. Darkness swallowed the room, and in the black glass of the TV screen, dozens of pale faces stared back at me. All mine, all smiling. I couldn't breathe. The motel room was pitch black except for the faint glow of the digital clock by the bed. But in the screen of the TV, I could see them. Rows of faces, mine. Their mouths moved in silent laughter, eyes glittering like they enjoyed the panic tearing through me. I stumbled back, my hip hitting the dresser. No, I whispered, you're not real. One of the reflections tilted its head, perfectly synchronized with my denial. Then it opened its mouth. We are more real than you. The words didn't come from the TV. They came from inside my head, echoing, overlapping, like a chorus of my own voice. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound only grew louder. You don't belong here. You took his place. You always knew. My knees buckled. I crashed against the bed frame, gasping. Their words burrowed into me, and the room spun like I was falling inside myself. And then, as suddenly as it began, the voices stopped. The lights flickered back on. The TV was blank, but taped to the screen was another note. My handwriting. They're lying. You belong here. Don't give it up. My pulse thundered in my ears. Two voices, two messages. Which one was true? The walls felt too close. The air too thin. I grabbed my bag and bolted. Outside, dawn was breaking. The streets were damp with last night's rain, the city still half asleep. I walked fast, almost running, as if I could leave the whispers behind. But I couldn't leave the question. What if they were right? What if I wasn't supposed to be here? I didn't realize where I was heading until I found myself at the library. It was an old stone building I'd passed a dozen times but never entered. The doors opened with a groan, and the air inside smelled of dust and paper. It was empty except for the woman at the desk. She glanced up, her expression tired but kind. Early start. I nodded absently and made my way into the stacks. I don't know what I was looking for. Answers. Proof. Something to anchor me. I pulled books at random. Local history, folklore, psychology. Pages blurred as I skimmed. Doppelgängers, doubles, myths of shadow selves. Warnings of encounters that drained your soul, omens of death, replacements sliding quietly into your life until no one noticed the switch. Some said you'd lose your reflection. Some said you'd lose your name. One passage made me stop cold. The double does not arrive, it awakens. It was always there, waiting. The question is not whether it exists, but which version you are. My stomach turned. Always there, waiting. A thud echoed down the aisle. I froze. Another thud, closer. I backed away, peering around the shelves. The library should have been empty. But at the end of the row, a shadow stretched across the floor. I stepped out, and locked eyes with him. Me, again. But this one was different. His skin looked pale, almost translucent, veins like faint lines of ink beneath the surface. His smile was too wide, his eyes too dark. He didn't speak. He just raised a finger and pointed at the book in my hands. Stay back, I said, my voice cracking. He tilted his head, then stepped closer. I dropped the book and ran. The library became a maze, rows of shelves twisting endlessly. No matter which turn I took, he was there, stepping out from the next row, waiting. Finally, I burst into the open reading room, heart pounding. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, and for a moment I thought I'd escaped. Until I saw them, not one, not two, dozens, all of them me, standing in the sunlight, surrounding me in silence. My legs went weak. I backed against a table, clutching its edge like it could keep me upright. Then, one of them spoke. "We're not your enemy." The others nodded, perfect in sync. I shook my head violently. "You're not real." "We are," another said. "We are every path you didn't take. Every choice you left behind. Every version of you still waiting for a turn." The words sliced through me. My mind reeled. "What do you want from me?" The one closest stepped forward. His eyes locked on mine, and I felt something shift, like gravity itself bent toward him. "To go back," he said softly. "To take what's ours." He reached out, fingers brushing my arm. The touch burned cold, like ice pressed to my skin. In an instant, memories flooded my mind that weren't mine. A childhood spent in another town. A career that failed before it began. A loneliness deeper than anything I'd ever felt. I yanked my arm free, gasping. "Stop." But they all stepped closer. And then, another voice cut through. "Don't listen to them." I spun. At the doorway stood another me, but not pale, not twisted. He looked exactly like me, down to the clothes I'd packed in my bag. And in his hand, he held another note. He tossed it across the floor. I snatched it up, heart racing. "They want your place. Don't let them take it. Fight." I looked up at him, desperate. "Who are you?" He met my eyes, steady. "I'm you. The real you." The crowd of doubles hissed in unison, their faces twisting in anger. The air grew heavy, lights flickering, windows rattling in their frames. The room vibrated with their rage. The other me shouted over the chaos. "If you give in, you'll disappear. You'll be nothing but another reflection. You have to fight." I stumbled back, torn in two. One side pulling me toward them, promising truth, belonging, inevitability. The other side demanding I resist, cling to myself, even if I didn't know what real meant anymore. The pale double lunged, his hand reaching for my chest. And when his fingers touched me, my vision exploded into white. I saw every version of myself, laughing, crying, screaming, dying, flashing like lightning. My body convulsed, my mind splitting apart. And then, in that unbearable light, one thought cut through all the noise. If I don't choose now, I'll lose everything. So I chose. I grabbed the pale double's wrist and yanked him closer. His eyes widened in shock. "I'm not giving up," I growled. And I pulled. Instead of him taking me, I dragged him inside. For a heartbeat, it felt like swallowing fire. His memories, his rage, his emptiness tore through me. But I held on, refusing to let go. When the light faded, the room was empty. No doubles, no reflections, just me, collapsing to my knees, gasping like I'd run miles. My body shook violently, but I was still here. I was still me, or at least, I thought I was. Because when I looked up at the nearest window, the reflection staring back wasn't mine. It was smiling, and I wasn't. I didn't move for a long time. I just knelt there in the library's echoing silence, staring at the reflection in the window. The smile stayed frozen on its face, sharp and wrong, while my lips were pressed in a thin, trembling line. I raised my hand slowly. The reflection raised its too, but not quite in sync. A fraction of a second too late. My stomach dropped. "Not me," I whispered. The reflection's smile widened. Its teeth looked sharper somehow. And then, with a faint shimmer, it stepped out of the glass. The surface rippled like water, and suddenly there it was, solid, breathing, standing in front of me. It looked exactly like me, except for the smile that never wavered. "I told you," it said softly, my voice dripping with satisfaction. "You let me in." I scrambled backward, hitting the table behind me. My mind raced. I'd absorbed one of them, taken it into myself. But had I trapped it, or freed it? The double tilted its head, watching me with calm amusement. "It's funny, you thought you could fight us. But you don't fight the tide. You drown in it." I forced myself to stand. My legs shook, but I kept them under me. "Why me? Why here? What do you want?" The double stepped closer. "Because you're hollow. You left gaps in yourself, regrets, empty spaces. We fit perfectly into the cracks." It leaned closer until I could see the faint shimmer under its skin, like water rippling beneath the surface. And what do we want? To live, to feel, to stop being shadows. Its breath brushed against my face, cold and damp, and to take your place. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was fury, maybe desperation, maybe just survival. I shoved it back with everything I had. It stumbled, surprised, and for the first time the smile faltered. That gave me strength. You want my life, I said, voice shaking. Then take it the hard way. I lunged. We collided, fists and elbows, a blur of motion that felt like fighting a mirror. Every strike I threw, it matched. Every move I made, it copied. We crashed into tables, sent books flying, glass shattering as we slammed against a window. But there was one difference. I hesitated. It didn't. Pain exploded across my jaw as its fist connected. I reeled, tasting blood. The double laughed, low and cruel. You can't win. You're fighting yourself. No, I spat, wiping my mouth. I'm fighting you. It came at me again, faster this time, relentless. But I remembered the pale one's touch, the way I'd pulled it into me, absorbed it. I focused, heart hammering, and when the double's hand slammed against my chest, I grabbed its wrist and pulled. The sensation was unbearable, like lightning ripping through my veins, like drowning in someone else's memories. But I didn't let go. Images poured into me, birthdays that weren't mine, mistakes I never made, lovers I never lost. Whole lives collapsing into me. The double screamed, its smile twisting into a snarl. Its form shimmered, flickering between solid and transparent. And then, with one last wrenching pull, it vanished. Silence. I staggered, collapsing against the table, lungs heaving. My vision blurred. My head throbbed with the weight of too many lives jammed inside one skull. But the library was empty again. No doubles, no reflections, just me. I stumbled outside into the daylight. The city bustled as if nothing had happened. Cars honked, people hurried along the sidewalks. No one looked twice at me. For a moment, I let myself believe it was over. That I'd won. Days passed. I tried to return to normal. Work, groceries, small talk with strangers. My apartment didn't feel as haunted anymore. But there were cracks. At night, I'd dream of lives I never lived, jobs in cities I'd never visited, children who called me dad, graves with my name carved in stone. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the memories clinging like spiderwebs. Sometimes, in conversation, I'd catch myself almost saying something that wasn't mine, an inside joke with a friend I never had, a story from a past that wasn't real. And the worst part, sometimes I couldn't tell the difference anymore. One evening, I was walking home when I passed a shop window. I glanced at the glass, expecting to see my reflection. And I did, but it didn't move when I did. It just watched, and smiled. My chest tightened. I kept walking, refusing to look back. But inside, I knew. I hadn't won. I hadn't destroyed them. I'd only let them deeper in. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the original anymore. Maybe I was just the latest shadow, wearing a life that didn't belong to me. Sometimes, when I'm lying awake at night, I hear it. A whisper, my own voice, soft and patient, almost ready, and I wonder, when the next me arrives, will I recognize that I'm the double? Or will I smile, and let him in?